Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tax Show for People Who Owe. I'm Dave.
And I'm Phil.
And today we're going to talk about taxpayer representation. More importantly, why you should consider hiring a professional when you're dealing with a revenue officer. So Phil, what are some of the benefits when I hire a professional when I'm dealing with a revenue officer?
First of all, it's not as intrusive to your day-to-day. Those interviews, those financial worksheets, all that's going to be handled by a professional rather than you having to be in attendance. So I think that's the most practical benefit of having a representation. But I think more important is the fact that your representative, if they're good, will know when the RO crosses the line.
Got it. So you honed in an important point there. As we talked about in a prior episode, RO assignment or RO tax case is a pretty escalated enforcement one, right?
Right.
So what are some of the benefits of hiring a tax professional like this?
That situation, as you said, is high stakes, and those interviews can be intimidating, David, for
Absolutely.
a taxpayer. And so sometimes taxpayers won't know how to handle answering those questions, and oftentimes having a representative can give them a peace of mind where their representative is having their best interests in mind and guiding them through the interview process.
That sounds pretty hairy, and it is. So this is a lot like potentially a police officer interviewing you.
Correct.
Oftentimes, taxpayers reach out to us after the interview has taken place, and they may have said something that, because they were nervous, it wasn't even true.
Correct.
So what are some of the potential risks of going in alone and answering these questions?
With any service you pay for, David, you're buying expertise in that area. So there's a knowledge gap between normal taxpayers and qualified representatives. That's for one. So the risk is that perhaps the revenue officer might be crossing lines you're not even aware of with due process, right? Other risks include maybe putting yourself in a situation where you might perjure yourself, which can lead to criminal investigation referrals. And in fact, if you didn't know, the revenue officers are responsible for the lion's share of criminal investigation referrals within the IRS.
Wow, that's a heavy topic there. Now, ROs are more informed than ever. So oftentimes we found out recently that they have the answers to the questions they ask.
Correct.
So what's some of the information they have now and that they're using that they may have not used before?
I think that's a great distinction. IRS has always had third-party information from whether your employer, the assets that you hold, whether it's onshore or even offshore. And now, even with crypto, there's a wealth of information. But the key point here is that now the ROs are better trained to utilize this and really follow the money.
Got it. One particular category that receives a lot of revenue officer assignments is small businesses. Now, why do you think that is, Phil?
Primarily because of payroll taxes, David, and in particular, unpaid federal tax deposits.
So they're behind in their payroll. Now, the revenue officers obviously know this. So Phil, what are these revenue officers doing prior to the actual visit on site?
Great question, David. They'll be doing due diligence. And what that means is they'll be doing research on the spending habits of these taxpayers who they suspect to be responsible for these federal tax deposits that weren't being made.
Got it. So they'll have a lot of information at their fingertips when they visit on site. So what's it going to look like the day of the visit?
So oftentimes, trust fund recovery penalty interviews are conducted by these revenue officer. And what that means is that they're looking to see who's responsible for making these payments. And also, was there any willingness in their failure to make these deposits?
There's a big difference there. Good point. So if someone is using the payroll deposits to keep the business afloat, which they shouldn't do, but it's less egregious than doing what?
Buying an extra car or two, perhaps, remodeling your house with the extra money.
So it sounds like when they visit, they're prepared, and they're going to be moving pretty fast, right?
Absolutely, David. You hit it right on the head. And what's important to remember in this situation is that every taxpayer has a right to representation. And what that means is you can suspend that interview right then and there.
Wait, you're telling me that we could suspend the revenue officer interview?
Absolutely, without even answering one single question.
Okay, now you see the power of representation, right?
Correct.
Okay, now how much time am I buying with the suspension or saying, or what should I say to suspend it?
The things you can say is, I want to consult an authorized representation, I plan on hiring representation, things of that nature. And this will buy you at minimum 10 business days, David. Sometimes longer depending on the situation.
Okay, or you could say, I am going to hire Optima. And you can do that by downloading our app. We're available 24/7 and you can request help anytime you need. That wraps up our show. Phil, any last words?
As usual, do something. Hire representation, especially if you're dealing with an RO.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you for watching today. Please be sure to like
And subscribe.
so you are up to date with all the information you need when you're taking on the IRS.
And as always, do something.